Hey guys, welcome to Finally Clicked, the podcast where we discuss business, leadership, and personal development. My name is Margaret Smith, and I'm the Director of Operations for Pickett Street Properties, a real estate team out of Bothell, Washington. And I'll be here every week with our owner and team leader, Jesse D. Moore. We'll be digging into concepts and ideas that have helped us both personally and professionally. And you'll also get a chance to hear from local and national experts that we know provide massive value to get to the point where it all finally clicks.
It's good. It's great. It's the boundaries.
Hey guys, welcome to Finally Clicked. My Italian heritage is coming out today.
Oh, it's so good. So great.
That's how I greeted Jesse this morning when he came in.
I feel like I'm yelling into the microphone. Sorry,
That's
everybody.
Perfect.
So good.
It's so good.
So great.
He asked me how I was today, and I said, it's so good.
It's so good.
It's true. It's a big day with boundaries.
Boundaries is at the forefront of our minds and conversation.
That's a big deal.
Do you think we'll ever have a non-rambling episode?
I mean, I actually think we do a pretty good job of not rambling.
I know, but it's not like outlined out.
Oh.
It's not like we have a whiteboard that we're working off of here.
No, unless something very specific happens and we need to do that. I don't believe we ever will, because I don't think we operate that way, specifically you. And actually me. I'm better without an outline sometimes. You have to guide it, though. I don't know if people realize that oftentimes I'm usually the one that has an outline for everything, not for this. You actually have to steer the conversation sometimes.
I'm like the rudder of the ship.
You are, because I dig into stuff and then I go down that bunny hole and I don't know where the heck we are.
You're the bunny hunter.
Yeah, I'm a bunny hunter.
Bunny hunter on a kayak floating through
On a kayak.
this mysterious maze we call our podcast.
Yeah,
I want to paint a picture with words for everybody.
do it.
There are times we have abundance, and there are times when you have to split the last glass of whiskey because that's all that's left. So today, Margaret and I have to split a glass of whiskey to have this conversation.
Yeah.
Because we have an ASMR and whiskey episode coming up, which is going to require whiskey. And
now I better write it
I'm a little
down.
disappointed that this far in, we don't have a sponsor in the whiskey
I don't know why no one
world.
has jumped yet to sponsor us
Right?
with a bottle of whiskey. I know.
We've had no shortage of ASMR companies offering to sponsor our podcast. And I said, no, I'm holding out for a strong whiskey sponsor.
You know, I have noticed we have a couple new followers that are specifically whiskey companies on our Instagram. So maybe they're evaluating us right now.
They should be.
They should be, right?
That's just a taste of what could happen if you have us sponsor you. Just listen to this golden eardrops. All right, we are now on part 3 of a 3-part series. It's always nice to reach the finish line.
It is a good feeling.
And we wanted to talk about authenticity. Couldn't talk about that without talking about self-awareness. And then we realized there's really a third part to authenticity, which is boundaries. And essentially the idea being that once you are more secure in who you are and who you want to be, then you have to do a better job of protecting yourself and not allowing anything and everyone to have an impact upon you.
Yep.
Margaret is on her phone chronicling.
Well, I have to at least put a sneak peek on our Instagram. With the hashtag whiskey to encourage those whiskey sponsors.
I'll just talk to myself. As a former narcissist, I don't need you. I don't need you in this conversation.
I specifically have had 3 people reach out to me to say that they're waiting for this episode. So
3 whole people.
3 whole people.
This is where you provide too much context.
I know, right? But
This is
3
where you
people means
say,
a lot to me.
We have been inundated
Oh, sorry.
with feedback from our last episode.
We've been completely overwhelmed with feedback.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
What'd you think of authenticity?
I thought it was striking.
Striking.
Yes, it's the best word I have for it. Because of your vulnerability, period. I was okay. You were really the star of that show.
You know, again, former narcissist. I do a good job patting myself on the back.
You did not pat yourself on the back that episode. You literally laid on your back in a vulnerable position. Right. No, I thought it was amazing. And when I've talked about it with the many people that have inundated us with feedback, they've never listened to anything like it on any business podcast. So I think it says a lot. People are enjoying this 3-part series. So maybe we've got a thing here with this 3-part piece. But like we said the last episode, people talk about authenticity. They talk about self-awareness, but they don't actually dig into it. It's kind of like this fluff that gets mentioned and tossed around like some clouds. But nobody ever actually digs into it. So people are really enjoying that we're bringing up real life situations, that we're explaining what we mean behind what we say, the context. So I'm really enjoying it. Like, I'm kind of sad actually to see this go. Not like that's even gone yet, but I think because I'm absolutely at this point right now in my life, both personally and professionally, where, as I've been sharing with you and the listeners, I'm drawing boundaries around me. And I just drew another one this weekend. So I need help with this. I don't know if I'm doing it right. I'm just doing it, but it feels right. And otherwise, if I'm not doing it, what I realized a couple months ago is I'm not sleeping. I'm not working out. I'm not taking care of myself because I get caught up in the anxiety of dealing with people that don't serve me.
I think the order of this series is pretty important. I don't think you can go boundaries, authenticity, self-awareness.
There's no way.
Right? And so I think a lot of people need boundaries in their life. And
everybody does.
And they don't sequence it in the right order. Mm-hmm. So they seek to enforce boundaries, but if they're not self-aware and if they're not coming from a place of authenticity, those boundaries break or move or change so often that they no longer mean anything, you know? Mm-hmm. And so boundaries seems like the next natural step for me, because as you become an authentic person and you live an authentic life, it becomes easier to differentiate people that are true to your moral code or true to your code of ethics, true to your dogma of life, than without authenticity, right? And so once you understand who you are and what you believe in and what standards you're going to keep, then you can start to draw lines in the sand and say, you know what? In order for me to be authentic to my true self, that means I have to cut this type of behavior and this type of behavior and people with this type of behavior out of my fellowship, because the impact is too great on me.
Yeah. Well, and so I get anxiety from it. And the other thing I get is I get zero growth, because if I'm continuing to surround myself with those people who either have negative things to say or aren't on the same path as me growth-wise or don't have awareness, it actually, someone said this to me last weekend on a phone call. I might be hopping over the place. We were talking about intuition. And she said, the more you put yourself around people that use intuition, the more yours will open up. And as I was thinking about that, I thought, oh, that's so true. That's exactly what's been happening with me in terms of my intuition. But then I think about this, and the more I surround myself with people, obviously, that are growth-oriented and are going places and have a network that I want to be a part of, the more I grow. So it makes total sense. At the same time, I think the hard part about it comes from, for me, not wanting to hurt people's feelings. Comes down to that, period. Like, I have such a hard time feeling like I could be causing someone pain. But then, when I've drawn these boundaries with these people most recently, they're actually feeling no pain.
Right. I was going to say, as I think about that, You're extremely gifted in delivering bad news to people without.
Would you say?
But
without it having like a hard
take
impact?
the charge out of it.
Okay.
So they know that it's coming from a good place, and that even if you're creating a boundary where you don't want these people to have as much of a role in your life, they still kind of understand and get it.
That's weird. Yeah,
it is weird because I don't have that effect. I think it's way harder for me to deliver an uncharged message.
I would say, yeah, I would agree
I
with
am
that.
so passionate, and I can be emotional, and I have this. The one thing I've been working on is I have such a strong sense of fairness. What's fair? That it gets me all fired up, and in my own head, if I make assumptions and I start to internalize the dialogue without actually having an external dialogue, like guessing and assuming what's going to happen or what they're going to say. And then I get emotional and charged up, and then I draw a line in the sand, and they're fine with it because they never want to talk to me again. You know what I mean? Like, I think you're really good at drawing boundaries and telling people about it in a way that it doesn't always keep them in relationship with you. People are sensitive, and in some situations it can't be helped. But I think you at least create a space where they can come back to you in the future. Whereas I'm really good at just like drawing a boundary that, you know, like, I don't know if you saw, did you see the movie with George Clooney where he's in space?
Probably.
I'm trying to remember what it was called.
I love George.
All these people are screaming out the name of this movie now. It had Sandra Bullock in it.
Oh, I'm pretty sure I did. Yeah.
Well, and in the movie, there's a part where George Clooney like gets some momentum in space, and that's a bad thing because it carries him away from the ship, and he's just gonna float into the ether. That's kind of how I draw boundaries. I draw boundaries where it's like just a little bit of momentum in a vacuum where they keep going the other way. They keep going away from me.
Do you think you've changed in your approach, or do you just think that's
I think I've softened over time.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Yeah. I mean, but space is space and dead is dead. You know what I mean? Like, it's not by a matter of degrees where degrees don't matter. That's how much I've improved.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, it's interesting. Do
you want another sex analogy to boundaries?
Sure, why not?
I was just thinking about it. All right, so last time I said that self-awareness was like losing your virginity.
Yep, that was epic.
Right? I mean, I didn't come up with an analogy for authenticity, though I'm sure I could.
I'm sure you could.
But I feel like boundaries is like the prophylactic of this analogy, right? Like, it separates who you're going to have interaction with and who you're not going to have interaction with.
True.
You don't want to ride that?
Well, I mean, let's ride that wave. Like, I mean, I can't help but go back to The Bachelor, which you and I were talking about recently. But absolutely. I mean, boundaries come up in everyday life all the time. And when it comes to your personal space.
All right. I tried. Okay. Just like, let's let it exist without trying to.
Poor Colton, right? Not poor Colton.
We're not talking about The Bachelor today. Maybe
it's the only show that I watch on occasion.
Maybe next episode. And Heel.
Yeah, no, Heel's a good one. That's legit. Something somebody should watch.
All right, but it's not true. I don't think that everybody has boundaries.
No, most people don't. I think, do they need them? Yes.
All right, so I used to be a person that prided myself in never letting anyone go.
Yeah.
I used to pride myself in it. And I was proud of it because I have abandonment issues, and I never want anyone to feel isolated and alone. And so anyone that I considered a close friend, I would back 110%. Even if their behavior was destructive, even if the relationship was destructive. And I've had a number of those relationships, especially in the last, more so, around the time of my separation and divorce. But during the 5-year window on either side of that, not 5 years, but there's a window of time where I absolutely did not have boundaries. I didn't cut people out of my life. I found ways to make it work because I was more afraid of letting people go than of their impact on me.
Yeah, I was much the same way. And I actually started thinking about it, and I didn't realize what I was thinking about. But in high school, I went to my basketball coach, who was really more of a mentor than anybody else I had. And I said, how do you do it? How do you every year have this team of girls? We become super tight, and then you have to say goodbye to them. The thought of saying goodbye to people literally made me unbelievably sad in high school even. And so I started creating, there's a little bit of a magic to it, partly. And I say that because when I went into college, I had an idea, an intention in my head before I even knew really what intention could do for me. And my intention was to create the community of friends that I had always wanted and never had prior to that. And so I specifically moved into a dorm that was girls only on the campus, even though there was co-ed dorms everywhere. And because I wanted to create a group for myself. And so I moved into the ground floor of this dorm room at Pacific Lutheran University in Tacoma called Harstad. And I met what then would be now 7 of my closest friends. So there's this thing about letting go that I think is super healthy, but I also haven't had to do it, and I haven't done it up until the last 4 years. And so I'm still struggling with it, under not knowing if it's the right thing to do, but at the same time feeling like it is right. I just have to live with that uncomfortable feeling of saying goodbye to someone, kind of, and knowing that they might enter my life at a different time period or different season, but I feels like I'm doing something wrong. And so to move from that intention of creating community to an intention of kind of making it a little bit more exclusive is a weird feeling for me because I'm such an inclusive person, I think.
I remember, so I was of the mind that I couldn't get divorced.
Yes. You and I had a very specific conversation when I first started, because at that time even you were unhappy, but you specifically told me you would never get divorced.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I bring that up because, that was a boundary for me. Like, I was never going to be a divorcee, and I was never going to be divorced. And I'm trying to bring that back to why I said it in the first place, because it just slipped my mind.
Well, when you had that boundary, you were not yet a changed person.
So during that time, I didn't have boundaries either.
Yeah,
and so
zero. Yeah.
Other than I'm not going to get divorced, right? And so then I eventually did separate, and I did get divorced, and that kind of showed. And I learned during that time that a lot of the things that I thought were true weren't true. And one of the things I had to realize very quickly was how to enact boundaries in my life, because I had all these friendships that were based on me cohabitating with this very specific person.
Yeah.
And those relationships grew in an environment where, I was married to this person. And so for us to extricate ourselves from that relationship meant some people didn't make the cut. So boundaries really didn't become important to me until after I was separated. And then I realized just how lost I was and how much I would modify my behavior to fit in with the people I was trying to be in relationship with.
Yeah.
And that I was trying to surround myself with. And that became really uncomfortable for me to just not know who I was and not be able to lock in on what I believed. And the only thing I knew to be true was how I felt and how some of these people made me feel.
Yep.
And I fought for these people and I fought for those relationships. And eventually the work it took to retain their affection and their presence and their friendship was destructive.
Yeah. I think that's a good, really solid point right there that you just brought up, is what's helped me decipher who I need to draw boundaries around are those people that require additional work. Because for someone that really adds value to your life, and not saying that everybody has to add value, but value could be as simple as hanging out with someone and in total peace and not feeling like you have to do anything extra to entertain them, to converse with them, anything. And so what I've recognized in the last 3 years that's helped me a lot is, am I doing something outside of my normal self that I wouldn't do for someone else with this person? Is this person making me feel uncomfortable? Are they making me feel guilty? Are they making me feel guilty is a big one for me. If they're making me feel guilty for not having called them in a certain amount of time, or like if they have really specifics, things to our friendship, guidelines or like rules that I can't, like, I don't have rules with my friends. We have a very clear understanding on, we all have a lot going on in our lives, and we connect when we can, and we support each other. And, you know, if someone's making me feel a certain way like that, that's a kind of a red flag to me.
So I have kids, and being a parent is such a learning experience because I constantly have to give them counsel,
feedback,
right?
all the time. Yeah.
And I'm trying to teach them about boundaries now, and I'm trying to teach them, you know, to be true to themselves and not to adapt for other people. And I think the biggest thing when we talk about boundaries is realizing that you have to know yourself first.
Yeah.
You have to identify what the values are that are unmoving for you. Because then when you realize that those standards are being violated, that's a alarm system.
Yep.
Right?
Totally.
And the first alarm goes off and says, hey, I don't jive with this behavior that this person is displaying. And so then that might turn into a conversation. I've realized for myself, there's a few things that I need in my life, and there's a few things about myself that aren't going to change. And so I think the first step in developing boundaries is know thyself. Mm-hmm. So I wrote down, I'm a highly impatient person. Mm-hmm. That's not going to change. Mm-hmm. I can flex it at times when necessary, but not really, quite honestly. I'm so impatient. Jill right now is going through our house and fixing a bunch of stuff. Like she took the shower valve apart and fixed it. And she did some other stuff. And I realized
that's amazing. My
biggest encumbrance in not doing those things or not doing them correctly is my impatience.
Sure. Yeah, I can imagine you doing that.
I'm not going to sit in the shower and take apart.
That's kind of amazing that she's doing
a finely tuned valve and find some way to mess it up and not find out until it's all the way done. And then I have to do it all over again. I think I've talked about this in an episode before, right? Like I'm a highly impatient person. And so doing things like that is not a good use of my time. I'm a passionate person. So I'm going to be emotional. That's not going to change too much. I can grow in wisdom and I can learn when emotion serves me and when it doesn't. But I have to know that about myself, and I have to realize that someone who's constantly kicking the bear is going to get the claws, right? And so I need to be careful of who I put around me and who stirs up my emotions. I have abandonment issues. So I'm thinking of one person you and I know that was a good friend of mine. But she would very quickly, anytime there was a new personality in the room or someone visiting from out of town, it would be a full-on like campaign for her to win their heart and affection, and it didn't matter. Like the fact that I was a friend of hers mattered a whole lot less in the presence of a new person, because that's how she did it. She jumped from person to person, island to island, friend to friend.
Yeah.
And that triggered in me some abandonment issues. On top of that, a big thing for me is benefit of the doubt, or being in a relationship of trust with somebody, where, like, we talked about this before. I never worry about you. Like, I'm never worried that you're gonna put a knife in my back, right?
God, yeah.
Like, I don't.
That's a big deal.
I trust you that you're not out to be malicious or to hurt me ever. And so because of that, you're in my circle of trust. But there are people that that's not true, and they may not give me the benefit of the doubt. That's a alarm for me. If I see that they don't give me the benefit of the doubt, and we've had a long-standing relationship, and they know my behavior, what my true behavior is like, that's a concern. And then another thing for me is track record. Like, if I've always shown up, expect me to always show up. If I always do what I say I'm going to do, expect me to always do what I say I'm going to do. And the fact that I've done that in the past a number of times shouldn't matter.
Yeah.
And so for me, all of these things are true, absolutely true about me, and aren't going to change.
Yeah.
And I need anyone in my life to be accepting of that. And if they're not accepting of that, I don't know that I can be in relationship with that person. And there's probably levels, just like in sales, right? Like A clients, B clients, C clients. We have A friends, B friends, C friends.
Yeah.
And there's different levels of boundaries and trust with each of those relationships. I desire A+ relationships where I don't have to edit or censor myself. I can speak freely what's on my mind without fear of repercussion or drama. Drama is a big thing with boundaries.
It's huge.
But first, know thyself. Again, that goes back to the first step, self-awareness. By being self-aware, by knowing who you are, and then using that process to become an authentic Margaret or authentic Jesse. Now you have a guide of operations, an instruction manual of sorts.
It's kind of like how they talk about knowing what your mission or vision is for the business. Because once you know that, then you can say yes or no to things that align with that.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's very important. You know, for team building, you have to know.
You literally can't build a business without it.
You have to know what your values are and make sure that you're hiring matches to that. And if you're not, man, you'll learn really fast.
Yeah, you just prompted me to write down my things, my qualities, and what helps me kind of set boundaries with people. Because mine are, I'm a very loyal person, loyal sometimes to a fault, which is where boundaries are stepping in and helping me. Empathetic, generous, doer, and I'm intelligent. And I think where I've found recently that I've had to start drawing boundaries is that because I'm putting myself out there more in the business world and in the world in the last 5 years with this job and with everything I've been doing here, I'm finding people want to use me for leverage. And it's becoming easier and easier, slowly, to understand who wants that sooner, I guess. It's really hard for me to understand that perspective. I try to put myself in their shoes because everything I do, I don't ever just expect to get something from someone. It's always like, I just give. And then if they give back, great. If they don't, no big deal. I can't keep doing that though, because I'm finding that certain people are wanting to leverage either my loyalty, my empathy, or my generosity a lot. Like, Margaret, can you just do this for me?
I've found that there are two different types of people generally in the world. And there's a buddy of mine, Jeff Latham, is the opposite of me in this. And these are the two types. Someone like me, I'm a bit of a skeptic. I believe that people are flawed and tragic and hurt people. And so I have to be careful about who I let into my space. So I'm more of a skeptic that way. I kind of might go into a new friendship or a new business relationship or anything, kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop or waiting for something bad to happen. Someone like Jeff Latham absolutely believes the best in people until you prove him otherwise. Yeah. And that's amazing to me because I can't operate that way. Yeah. He does it. And when someone shows themselves to be different than he expected, he puts a boundary in place, and that those people they don't have access to his life. He gives everyone access to his life, and then kind of then creates a list of who doesn't get in the next time, right? Whereas it's a party of one for me. And then I'll just slowly start to allow people in, right?
Yeah, I guess I do operate more like Jeff, but I'm probably just beginning with the boundary piece. Just beginning to set up boundaries.
And he does too,
Yeah.
right? That's what I'm saying is
Yeah.
that, but you let everybody in
Yeah.
and then you see how they behave and how they respond.
I mean, I let everybody in at level 3. If we, like you were talking about,
Right.
there's levels, different levels. Very few people actually, I would say there's probably 5 are into the innermost Margaret level, which is very, I don't think people, I can only reference INFJ, the Myers-Briggs assessment, where it talks about my intuition and it talks about, I don't talk a lot about actually my innermost feelings and thoughts and perspectives with everyone. I don't, because that requires double access entry. Like you've got to like break through the barriers to get there. So because of the inclusivity piece, though, my layer 3 or whatever you want to call it with social media, and I'm very genuine, I'm very authentic, I'm very myself, but it doesn't mean I have to let you in all the way. But the things that I put on social media and the things that I say, I actually do mean. And I think that comes across to people. So I think this is why there's so many gray areas in this piece for me.
Well, and I think the reason that you've gotten good at boundaries is because you've gotten better about self-care.
Yeah. I have to take care of myself. Absolutely. Yeah.
Like you get a little frantic.
A little? Yeah. Let's be real. My body will break down and then I won't be able to do what I want to do with my life, which is inspire people.
And you've learned over time that the thing that affects you the most, physically, emotionally, spiritually, is other people.
Yeah. Other people in conflict.
Right? Like you've talked about it openly on this podcast, how certain relationships like made you physically ill.
Yes.
Until you did something about the relationship.
That's why that movie Heal that you've commented on that we're going to talk about later is so important to me, because in that movie it literally talks about how the body and the mind impacts the body, and I don't think I've had a better display of that than in the last couple of years when that's happened. Your mind literally has so much power over your body, it's insane. And other people can impact your cells at a granular level.
And that's what I had to learn, was that I learned that most boundaries aren't even about the other person.
No.
It's about how I respond to them.
Yeah.
And I realized that I didn't like who I was when I responded to certain people.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I really pride myself in kind of being a drama-free zone. I don't want to be a whirling dervish of drama. Mm-hmm. But before I had boundaries, I was. Mm-hmm. And I was because I didn't have boundaries. Mm-hmm. Like, having boundaries keeps drama out of your life. Mm-hmm. And not having boundaries guarantees that you're going to have some drama.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So can you give an example professionally of where you have some boundaries for people?
In regards to...
I think you've actually had, so aside from personal stuff, I think you've had really good professional boundaries actually since I've known you.
Oh, so I do have good boundaries professionally. Mm-hmm. I know myself well enough to know that I'm less effective after 4:30 p.m.
Yeah.
So I try not to take appointments after that because I am not as sharp and I don't represent our team as well. Mm-hmm. And people ask me questions and it takes me longer to respond. So I've learned that. And I have a boundary about that. I try not to do weekend appointments because I have boundaries with my time with my kids and my time at home. Mm-hmm. And those are pretty uncommon for real estate agents, right? To say that they don't work nights and weekends. Mm-hmm. Now, it doesn't mean I don't do it on occasion. And right now, I'm going to be doing it as much as I have to, right? To keep the ball moving forward. Yeah.
But I think right from the beginning, you set boundaries with me too, as far as like you told me, I don't want you working after 5, or when you leave the office, you're done. And I've just realized in the beginning that was really normal to me because that's what I experienced at other jobs in corporate industries or nonprofit industries. But other real estate teams don't do that.
Yeah, if we wanted to talk about boundaries between a Rainmaker and a EA, we could be here for a while.
Yeah.
But it's absolutely necessary.
It is if you want to keep the people. Yeah. And just also to help... it taught me how to place boundaries for future needs in the company. Like, it's just actually, boundaries are such a good thing for a business, to run a business. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's important in real estate because real estate is so social, for one, right? Everyone's coming and talking to you and popping in and asking a question.
Yeah.
So you need boundaries there. There's boundaries in how much we can contribute to the market center, how much we can contribute to the office and the culture of the office before it starts to affect us personally as a team. Boundaries with clients. I give our agents permission to fire clients. Why? Because we have boundaries. It's not okay to treat people poorly.
Yeah.
And my agents matter to me. I don't want to put them in a hostile work environment where they have to decide whether or not they want to work for me because of a difficult client.
Yeah.
So those are the types of boundaries that we have in place that are mandate, my directive, I would say.
And I think when you set up boundaries, whether personal or professional, it's like you're demanding respect too. And people want to give you respect, actually. People like when you set that boundary, they're like, oh.
Well, it's just like kids, man.
Yeah, it's so like kids. It's very much that just
my
made
kids,
me think about
they push the boundaries all the time. And when I enforce them, they're never happier than the next day. And it makes no sense to me. I was like, we were just at each other's throats yesterday. And now you're cuddling on me and loving on me, and you're doing everything perfect and
You're the one that draws the line around their life,
right?
And they feel safe.
And why, as an adult, don't we respond in the same way?
That's a great question. Maybe as an adult, it feels more like you're more of a control freak, and you want to be in control of where your boundaries are at.
I think as a kid, you know that you're not in control.
You do,
right?
Yeah.
And then as you become an adult, you assume control.
Yeah.
And then the idea that someone else can say, I don't want to, you can't do this to me.
Yeah. Is limiting.
And you get all upset about it.
Yeah. I guess I have to say maybe that's where I was different than how some people would react. Not speaking of myself in my personal life as an adult, but coming into this business, I liked those boundaries in the beginning because it helped me begin to form what this company was about, what real estate was about. It helped me I like to see where the lines are so that I know how to cross over them or when to, or if I can.
Or how to fill it in.
Yeah.
But I feel like most people are ill-equipped with this. I feel like most people fall down when it comes to boundaries.
So much. Like I am just thinking back to a couple interviews that we've had over the last couple weeks with people that don't have boundaries and are super struggling. And I was having a conversation with one of my aunts on the way back from Oregon this weekend. Had driven down there to visit a friend. And that's my context, #context. And she said to me on the phone call, she said, Margaret, you're 37. I'm 67. You are where I am now. And I said, yes, it's because I've pushed for it. And so it's so cool for me to see.
Yes, I am 67.
It's cool for me to see where my aunts are in relation to where I am at, because they're watching me and they're seeing what I'm doing. And what I've gotten to learn in the last couple of years is what has taken them a lifetime to learn because of their generation, because of how they were raised, because of a number of things. And so it's healthy. And they can see that I'm literally living my life as honestly as I can with total truth and in a healthy way. Boundaries equal health for so many different reasons. So it's helping me moving forward to understand that it's not just for me, it's for the other person too. That when I create a boundary, I demand respect, and I respect my generosity, I respect my loyalty, all the good qualities about myself I have to protect in order to be able to give it to the people that I love the most. And to be able to perform the best way possible, not only in my job, but in my personal life and for my mission in life. It's really critical.
I have a friend who was starting to veer into the dramatic. And it was starting to affect our relationship. It was starting to affect how I acted. And so I sent her a text, a reminder of the 4 agreements, because she had read the book. Yeah. I had read the book.
Yeah, it's a good communication tool.
And so I didn't say I have an issue with you. I didn't say, hey, I need you to fix this.
Yeah.
I said, hey, I just want to remind you that this is my belief system. And so it's very important to me. Mm-hmm. And if you want to be in relationship with me, I need it to be important to you also. Mm-hmm. Her response was to get upset, right? Because I sent her the 4 agreements, which are don't make assumptions.
Yep. Be impeccable with your word.
Be impeccable with your word.
Do your best.
Don't assume.
Yep.
And do your best.
Yeah.
And those are pretty easy.
Pretty basic.
Right? Pretty basic.
Well, they're basic, but not easy for people.
Well, I mean, it's not like I'm lighting her on fire and saying, you hurt me, don't ever talk to me
But she probably,
again.
if she took offense, then it means she's probably in the wrong somewhere.
I'm
and
just
people
saying,
hate being called on carpet.
If you want to be in a relationship with me, these are the rules of operation. Mm-hmm. Please adhere to them. Mm-hmm. And if you can't, don't communicate with me. Mm-hmm. And it's so hilarious to me because in the response, she made assumptions. Or her lack of response, she made assumptions, right?
Yeah.
And I've mentioned before something you just alluded to, which is I like being older. I like being 42 now. Yeah. And I like not being 23. Yeah. I like not being 34.
Me too.
Because I'm less emotional. Yeah. I'm more wise. I'm more reserved. I'm less prone to react. It's so funny to look back and then see how 20-year-olds in this sense of self-assertion will just yell at you about what is true because they're trying. It's like they're trying to break free of the cocoon.
Totally.
Right? They're trying to bust their wings out, and it's hard because society puts all these limits on them, and so then they hold on to their truth and they use that to equip themselves. And then over time, you become more aware, and that changes. And so now I look forward to getting older and getting wiser and being less prone to the dramatic, less prone to hurting people, less prone to that selfish type of behavior.
So so that was an example of how you set boundaries with someone personally. Do you have another example of what you do? Like, so you said you enter into friendships kind of like you're like weary of what they might do. So say they do something and you're kind of like, okay, that doesn't jive with me. Yeah. Do you usually have a conversation straight up with them, or do you just kind of let it sit to see?
I don't usually bring it up. They bring it up with me.
They do? Okay.
Well, again, I'm bad at pretending, right?
Sure. So it's probably evident.
If I'm annoyed or I don't want to be around someone, or I get quiet and I turn to my computer when people, are talking around me, they figure it out. And then if they want to bring it up, I'm okay talking about it. And then it's very easy. Listen, this is how I live my life. These are the principles. If you want to be in my life, you have to abide by them. And if you fail to, our relationship's going to be different. That's all. So,
how have you talked to your kids about it?
Well, it comes up. I have, I have family members that I don't talk to very often, if at all. And mostly that is in large part due to how they affect me, not anything else. I have learned that I am not able to moderate myself around them or in communication with them. It's so vexing to me personally, and my inability to cope and deal with it means that I have to put a boundary in place. And that can be confusing to my kids when they don't see certain relatives or they don't understand why they never see me with them. And that gives me an opportunity to talk about it. Gives me an opportunity to say, and I tell kids all the time, the only thing they can control is themselves. So how they respond to a situation is absolutely on them. And so that's all I'm preaching is like, you can't, and my daughter's awesome at this. She's 12 years old. And if she has a very strong moral code. And if someone acts contrary to that, she'll give them a little break. She'll put them on timeout and I'll be like, hey, are you friends with this person? Well, not right now, Yeah. And so she's pretty awesome at it, which I'm proud of her.
That's impressive.
As she goes into this new tween age.
Yeah. It's a big deal.
It's not easy. And I think it's harder at that age to enforce a boundary because they don't get it. Yeah.
Yeah, it can be a lonely place. Rather than talking to people about it, I just stayed away from it, which meant I was by myself a lot.
You just stayed away from
people. So I remember telling my mom distinctly when I was a freshman in high school, I don't have any friends. Why don't I have any friends? Everybody else is hanging out, but I didn't want to hang out and do what they were doing.
Well, I was going to say this at the beginning. When I got divorced, people would like offer their sympathy or whatever. And I kind of was, eventually I developed a script for everything, right? Because that's
sure
basically a life hack for for coping with the world. So I developed a script that was basically.
Well, you say it over and over again. Yeah.
That's basically like, hey, I was with my ex-wife for 17 years total around. And I go, and 17 years is a long time to have a friend. I go, if you think about it. So I used to go.
Half your life.
I go, Nate, tell me one friend you have from elementary school. Tell me 5 friends you have from elementary school. And they couldn't. I go, tell me 3. And they couldn't. I go, tell me 1. They might tell me one friend they were in communication with on a weekly basis from elementary school. Yeah. But that was a rarity. Yeah. That was the exception, not the rule. Yeah. Most people don't have lifelong friends. Yeah. In fact, everyone goes through seasons with people. And in different phases of your life, you need different people to be with you. So I think you have to accept that if you have boundaries in your life, because you can't keep everybody. No. And so you realize very quickly, I think of that often, the fact that we aren't friends with people our entire lives. We're friends with people for different seasons of our life.
I think Derek Shank said it to me once. He was a team leader here at the Market Center. He said, you have friends for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. And it makes total sense.
And lifetime friends are amazing and wonderful and rare.
It's very rare, and it's because they see you in different points in your life, and they have a certain amount of understanding, and there's this, like, they know your story. And to have someone who knows your story, it feels amazing. So, yes, it is amazing, and I think people are under the impression that it happens more than it actually does. It just is not. It doesn't happen that often, actually, and that's okay.
Yeah, so, I learned that through that whole life lesson, is that when I sit down and think about it, I'm still not friends with the same people I was friends with in elementary school or middle school or high school or college or post-college or at that first job or the second job. Like, it changes. Yeah. Right now, I feel like it's changing for me, and that is, and Jill and I have talked about this, that our peer group is changing, and now we are, that's a goal of ours. Like, we're enacting change in our relationships because we want to attract different types of people. We want to hang out with different types of people. So we're creating new boundaries right now, and it's based on our existing relationships that have drama, and we want to extricate that from our lives, and that means we have to make new friends.
Yeah, that's a big deal. And it's fun, too. Like, one of the things my roommate, Dan, has mentioned is that every friend that has come over that I've invited over to the house is very different. I have very different. Oh, my
goodness. Yeah, your house. Actually, I think your mom's house is a better example.
My mom's house is probably the best.
But you're like the Pied Piper of Mary's house, right?
Yeah.
Like, you are the one that goes out and brings people in. And it's like it's a little bit of a challenge for you. It's like, what piece of the rainbow can I bring this time? Right?
And different friends have different levels of closeness to me, too. I just like to experience different people. And knowing that each different person brings something unique and different. I forget where I was going with that, though.
Sorry, that's my fault.
No, that's okay.
About, you were talking about Dan and how he said all your friends are so different.
Yeah, so the one group of friends that I have from college are 7 girls, and we stay in contact, and that's probably the biggest group of friends that I have from the longest time ago. That being said, though, like we were talking about earlier before we started this, that we were going to talk about boundaries in the face of unconditional love. So I absolutely have a level of unconditional love for humans, period. So the people I bring over to my house, not all of them are people that I talk to all of the time. That being said, I want them to know that their initial impression from me is that I care about them. It doesn't matter who they are, what they're into. It doesn't matter if I don't talk to them anymore. I still care about them. And so establishing that initial connection is probably like what I value the most or what I try to do no matter what. And then once that's established, then I'm like, here's how far you get to go, essentially. And
like first base, you mean? What are you talking about?
yeah, first base. You get to go to first base. And then it takes time. And I think the thing I've realized with this industry is that
You're not getting to second base right away.
People in real estate specifically, or maybe it's just business, not just real estate business. I've never been in a world like this. Like before this, it was so much slower. People I worked with before and other areas of life that I ran into, it was much slower. Here, everybody wants to get a home run. Like the first 6 months, everybody's like, let's get all the way around the bases. And I'm like, hold up. I don't go that fast because, and I think I've proven this with you, building trust takes freaking time. And if you're not going to be patient about it, you're not going to win with me.
Real estate's pretty hilarious when you talk about boundaries.
Insane.
Because everybody's in love with everybody.
Everybody loves everyone.
Oh my God, you're amazing. I just met you. It seems like we've known each other forever. Oh my, have you met her? She's like my long lost sister. Oh, what? Let's come over tonight. Let's have drinks. Oh, what, honey? Why is she still here at 2 a.m? He or she? Oh, we were just talking. The total time we just forgot everything that was happening.
And so
that was day one of meeting somebody as a real estate agent.
I get swept up into that arena sometimes. I definitely did the first couple years, and I still do now because with the emotion of it, when we're at an event, I'll be right up there at the head of the group with everybody. I love this person, Jesse. Have you met this person?
Okay, I'm gonna out Julie Banta for a second. Julie Banta is our team leader and a close friend of mine.
She and I are very much like that.
And I just mimicked her, okay? I just totally mimicked her. Because she's an amazing networker.
She's such an amazing networker.
And she's amazing
and it's
at
totally
building rapport.
Do. Yeah.
So I'll be like, hey, how was your night? Or what's going on? And she's like, oh, I'm so tired. I'm like, why are you tired? And she's like, oh, I met so-and-so at 7 p.m. last night for a drink. And to talk about this opportunity. And they left my house at 4 a.m. Yeah. And I'm like, what? Wait. What happened? How'd you go from 7 p.m. to 4? And it's her. She's like, and to be fair, and I think I can say this without repercussion, I think she'd honor it. She doesn't have a lot of boundaries in her life.
No. And she and I are similar. And we've had conversations about that because she loves on people. She absolutely loves on people. And with that, you have to be able to, I've had to say to people, I'm sorry, I have to go to bed now. And it's super hard for me to say, but I'm like, my eyes are dripping. I look like I'm probably half dead. They know I'm tired, but they just want to stay. They don't care if it's 11 o'clock.
Well, that's a little bit of the extrovert versus the introvert thing happening. But
yeah.
But yeah, without outing, I guess I'm totally outing her, but whatever. I mean, Julie.
That's part of her
Julie's
success.
more like Jeff Latham, where
yes,
she is going to give you 100% and then pull it back if you show yourself to be different than she expects.
Yeah.
But she's going to go, you know what? I believe the best in you. Stay at my house till 4 a.m. Let's stay up and talk.
And I think how you respect that is you honor that. When I'm with her, when I hang out with her, I get up and leave at 11 because I know she won't tell me to. And so that's how I show respect to her, is providing her with that boundary, even if she can't draw it herself. Yeah. She's a great example. She's an amazing networker. And that is what I'm good at. I'm good at networking and I'm good at creating connections because that's what I value. And so when that comes naturally, you naturally have a network of people. You just do. But it means you have to be really good at boundaries. And I'm still getting there. So, yeah.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the pregnant pause of the podcast.
The pregnant pause.
I'm just trying to imagine what our listeners are thinking in relationship to this conversation and how we can speak to them.
I think, when I think about some of the admin that I know and some of the reasons that they're really curious about this episode is because they literally don't know what to do physically to create a boundary. And so we've mentioned some of the things as you were talking about how you created boundaries. I don't know if we have any other tips for them, but I think the first one is knowing yourself and even writing. If you just want to write down the 3 things that you value about yourself to help remind yourself when it's time to set a boundary, that might be good. And then, hey, this is the reason maybe people don't talk about it is because we just kind of take it at face value, but I actually have the conversation. So in the last year, I've had 3 conversations, and I say the hard things, which I know is hard for people to understand. But if you go to someone and you do a physical check, you know yourself, you know your values, then you realize you're having a physical reaction to someone, which is what happens to me. So if someone's crossing my line and maybe overstepping their bounds in terms of abusing my generosity or abusing my empathy or my loyalty, I actually have a physical reaction. And so I've recognized now that when my stomach hurts or when I feel so much anxiety, that's a sign to me that I have to talk to that person.
You have to talk to them?
Yes. And then I'll have a conversation with them about, hey, this is how I feel when you do this or this. Can we talk about this? And if the conversation goes well and they understand it, then that helps to kind of set a boundary. It means they understand they can't do that anymore.
Yeah. And
if they abuse that again, then either I have one more conversation with them or I take a step back from their friendship. And so that would be a step to me as a tip for admin, that oftentimes we are in a position in a company where we kind of need to please people. We need to do what they want done, not just because it's our job, but because it actually makes our jobs easier and it makes a company function when we know what people need. Because that's our mode of operatum, or that's not the right word,
No, that's right.
Mode of operatum.
Modus operandi is what you're trying to say.
Because that's our mode, it's really hard to step out of that, because from 9 to 5, or really 12 hours a day, our mode is to please people. So I think for admin, where we struggle is how do we step out of that mode? Because we're functioning at a level where we need to make people happy. We need to make things happen. We need to make sure stuff flows. How do we protect ourselves when we step out of that job? And it's really hard to switch that gear. And I think that's what we struggle with from an operations standpoint, or a personality standpoint, where you might be more of a people pleaser, which is not a bad thing. You like to make people happy. How do you switch that mode and switch that gear so that you can protect yourself? So
I do it by limiting how much time I give to other people.
Yeah.
I love entertaining.
Yeah.
But I entertain a lot less than I used to.
Yeah, you do.
And that's more a function of boundaries than anything.
Mm-hmm.
I can't have everybody over. I can't entertain everybody. It's exhausting.
Yeah.
I'm exhausted. If I have a party and I entertain, I'm exhausted because I'm the one making the drinks. I'm the one doing the food. Mm-hmm. I'm the one making sure everybody's good, you know? Mm-hmm. And everybody's nice and they try to help, but that's not how it works, really. Mm-hmm. And so I've had to limit who's at those functions or who I'm willing to serve. And, you know, I make a joke about it. We did a little gathering at my house, which was mostly admin. Somehow that worked out oddly.
Well, not somehow. It's because it was Sarah Trotsky's...
it was to celebrate her
competition. Yeah.
And I made her... I said I'd make her whatever she wanted after a competition. Her competition ended at like 9 p.m.
Yeah.
And so I said, hey, friends of hers and friends of mine could come over to my house. The UFC fights are on. You can watch UFC. I'll make some food and I'll make drinks. And then, Sarah, when you come over, I'll make you whatever she wants. And she wanted French toast. Yeah. So I'm like, great, no problem. Well, there was a whole bunch of people that had never been in my house that were in my house. And my boundaries were getting trampled on all over the place. And the noise level, I mean, it was insanity. And I complained about it. And I wasn't joking around. Like, I was complaining, legit complaining about it. And Jagles picked on it, and she saw it right away. And other people, not so much, right? But that's an indication, like, I do like to serve people, but I only like to serve the people that are going to be honorable in how they treat me. Which makes me think about, it'd probably be easy to kind of come up with a list of boundaries for admin and boundaries for rainmakers. Regardless of personality, that might apply to just about everybody. Should we talk about that?
Sure, yeah.
We've kind of talked a little bit about some already, like time, right? So for you, I don't ask you to clock in at a certain time. I don't ask you to clock out at a certain time. Yeah. If anything, I have to tell you to leave. Yeah. I have to tell you to go on vacation. Like, I'm not micromanaging you and your work. And I like you to have boundaries on how much you're here because I want longevity. I want you to be with us for a long time. And if you get overworked and overwhelmed, that's not going to happen. So that's a boundary.
Mm-hmm.
Correct?
Yep, correct. Time.
What's that one on the Rainmaker side? I get asked to do a lot of things, and I was just thinking, I'm saying no right now.
Speaking engagements or, mostly
teaching classes
teaching.
Or
yeah.
got a minutes, right? Like this year I've told everyone I'm saying no. Mm-hmm. I'm not doing the LC this year. Mm-hmm. I'm not doing a lot of things I normally would do to contribute to the office because I need to focus on the business right now.
Yeah.
So that's a boundary.
Yeah, I could almost just call that engagements.
You have a sign on your door for a one thing time. Mm-hmm. That's a boundary. Mm-hmm. That's saying, hey, keep out until I'm doing something important. If you honor me, then honor this sign.
Yeah, I think something that I think you had mentioned I do earlier that helps me do this with grace is I always preface things with, hey, I love you, and this. And so when I'm giving someone bad news or I'm having a conversation with someone, I start with that. And so I've thought about, I'm going to...
the Oreo? You do the Oreo technique?
No, I don't do the Oreo. Heck no, that doesn't work well. It's because I'm going to change my sign to extend it. I'm going to say, hey, I love you, and it's our one thing time. If you, I need you to respect this because it means I get to leave at 5. And when people don't realize is that they're not the only person that stopped by our office.
No.
And so I think people just don't realize.
Didn't I go off on a podcast about how I was going to put a clock in there?
Oh yeah, we're gonna be a Chinese checkers timer.
Not Chinese checkers, chess. Oh, chess timer.
Chess timer. Yeah.
Chinese checkers.
That's what I remember. Yeah. No, we need to do that, and it's and I appreciate that people want to stop by and say hi to us, but I think when you personalize it and say, hey, Margaret won't be able to leave at 5 and go to yoga. Margaret won't be able to leave at 5.
Because Jesse's so domineering that he's going to make her.
No, because everybody else is cutting away at my time.
Yeah.
And 5 minutes here and there turns into 40 minutes pretty quick, which it takes me. I think I do a really good job at making it appear like I do everything super easy, which is great. I keep my desk clean. I get things done. People are always like, how do you do what you do? It's because I work. And because I time block and I get things done in certain blocks of time, when that time gets taken away from me, you're taken away from my family time. You're taken away from my personal time.
Yeah.
And so I think people just need a reminder of that, especially extroverted people. If they see that sign on my door, they usually stop. So I'm going to add something to it that just says, just remember that when you do this, you're taken away from Margaret's time outside of the office. So if you want to take me out for dinner and get to know me personally, if you want to take me out on the weekend, go bowling or something, that's great. Let's do that. But let's not do it during those times when I'm very much getting things done that I need to get done so I can have a life outside of the office.
Are you asking people to take you bowling?
Take me bowling. I don't actually like to bowl.
Take me bowling. No, you know what? Let's play some Chinese checkers.
It would be my favorite thing. Take me to a movie. I know we're not going to talk, but just take me to a movie.
Oh my gosh, what an
and then we can talk on the
say.
Way into the movie, and we can talk during the commercial breaks.
I never take people to a movie for that reason. Hey, I really want to catch up and see how things are going with you. Do you want to go to a movie?
So yeah, I don't really like to catch up. I can catch up literally in 10 minutes.
Well, you're catching up all the time with people.
All the time. It's exhausting.
Can we talk
about that for a minute? How do you do that quickly? Because
how do you do it? Because you are way more extrovert. All of a sudden, you're in extroverted land. And I'm going, what are you doing over there? I think you're like Wreck-It Ralph. Like you just jumped into the wrong dimension.
I haven't seen that movie yet.
And you're in there playing like an extrovert.
I am, I know. And then I go home and my mom calls me and I'm like, I don't even have the energy to tell you what happened because I've already said it.
And I'm an extrovert and I don't do as much as you do.
I know. I don't know.
Well, you're far more enjoyable than me. Maybe that's the demands. Let's just say the demands aren't the same. People aren't like, hey, Jesse, you want to go bowling and play Chinese checkers? And I'm like, yeah, I've been dying for someone to ask me that. I'm so funny.
My roommate and I joke that we're kind of like an old married couple. God, we're so not.
You and Dan?
Yeah, because
you and Dan are like an old married couple?
Because I come home and he's literally like, how was your day? Tell me all about it. And I'm like, I don't want to talk about it because I've lived it. I just lived it. And I'm realizing, gosh, this is like good training for if I ever live with someone, if I ever live with a partner, like going to have to learn to do this stuff. But it's the same issue I've had my whole life, is that's the introvert in me. As I come home, I never wanted to tell my mom anything, even though she wanted to hear all about it. It's the same thing with Dan. And so that's why my mom's so glad that I have a roommate, because she thinks it's like the healthiest thing for me. And I'm sure it is, but I just lived the day. Can I just end it and then I'll tell you about it tomorrow maybe?
I can be that way too, where I don't really.
I just lived it.
Yeah.
I don't want to talk about it yet. So.
Well, you might need time. There's a legit thing, and my coach taught me this, that at the end of the day, like a suspended amount of socializing or work or attention or discipline drains your testosterone in your body.
Oh, I remember that, yeah.
Which contributes, and having higher levels of testosterone allow you to deal with more things. But as that depletes throughout the day, your ability to deal depletes.
Yeah. And
it can be rejuvenated by just like, once you get home, locking yourself in a room for 20 minutes.
That's right.
And just like watching a sitcom or doing something for 20 minutes where you don't have any demands on you, any pressures on you, and it allows that reserves to get built back up again, where you can then deal with people.
That's a good idea.
So I did that. I've done that in my relationships where I'm like, hey, when I get home, just kind of leave me alone for 20 minutes.
Yeah.
You'll have a better result.
Yeah, yeah.
Than if you start hammering me like, hey, what was your day like? Tell me all about it. Sometimes I just need to internalize it, and then I
do think that's what meditation has done for me, which I think possibly now might lead me to think that maybe that's what's helping me with drawing boundaries, actually. Because I'm doing it every morning, and it's the only time I stop. And even though it's
collaborate and listen, Ice is back with a brand new invention.
Oh my God, of course. Just drop it.
You're talking about how meditation's helping you.
Yeah. Well, when I meditate, I still have things creep into my mind all the time about, like, even this morning I had to stop meditation, and I was just doing a 9-minute one, but I had to stop and I had to email myself something so I didn't forget, because I couldn't stop thinking about it. Like, don't forget to do this, Margaret. But it's the only time I literally don't think about anything else but just being present and listening to this voice guide me through this meditation. And it's calming my nerves down so much that maybe I just need to do that when I get home.
I think there's a lot to be said at the beginning of a day and the end of a day.
Yeah.
And so in an effort to aid my back, I went to a physical therapist. And he talked to me about how, like, have you ever seen a dog get up from sleep? They don't just get up and run, right? Or get up and walk. They stretch, like, diligently.
That's true.
Right?
Yeah.
They have a whole stretching routine that they do before they even move.
Before they move,
right?
Yeah.
And I've gotten away from that, and so I need to do that. I think meditating at the end of the day could be super helpful to, like, file stuff away, right? To kind of reorganize your brain space. And it's probably a twice-a-day thing. I could do it in the morning and at night, and I'd probably be better served by it.
Yeah. It's been amazing.
Meditation? How do you like having boundaries in your life?
It's one of those things where when they say you experience growth, it's like growing pains. I think I'm still in the pain phase. It's painful right now. And yet, specifically after that conversation I mentioned about with my aunt on the way home, I realized I wish I had recorded that conversation, because I actually just verbalized what's happening. And it's amazing, actually. I feel like I'm becoming the adult Margaret, and I haven't been myself in that way ever, actually.
Yeah.
So boundaries are helping me, like, respect myself more. But it's painful still right now. And I think it's going to be painful for probably a couple more years. But I respect myself too much not to do it. So it's critical. If I want to succeed at the level I want to succeed at, I have to master this, or it's not going to happen. And so I told my aunt, she said, how do you feel how are you feeling staying in those relationships where the boundaries aren't happening? I said, the relationships aren't there anymore, because I literally can't live any other way. It's not even like there's an option. Hey, you have this version of Margaret or you have this one. There's only this one version.
Yeah, right.
And if you don't fit in it,
That's
you
why,
don't fit in it.
That's why authenticity is so
Yes.
important.
And my aunt was like, wow, that is amazing. And I said, I know. And I said, it's literally like I have no choice, though. I've seen what it looks like and what I am now, that self-awareness has brought me. And there's no turning back. If you don't want to be a part of it, I'm actually okay with it now. And it's weird. The only people that I for sure will never drop out of my life absolutely are my family and the people that have shown me that they're willing to weather the hard conversations to change with me. And some of those people are coming out of the woodwork from, thankfully, from that time in college with those friends that I've made, like specifically Marika and Gwyneth, who I've talked to about this podcast and who are listening, and my friend Jessica, who I just had another conversation with. They're weathering that with me because they understand they understand the value of growth, and they understand that I still love them and I want them to be there with me. I have no choice at this point because what I've seen is like so exciting and so amazing and so worth living for. I couldn't live any other way now.
Well, and there's an aspect to setting boundaries that I was thinking about before this, that I can generally tell when I first meet someone if they have boundaries or not.
Yeah.
Right? Like you can tell.
Yeah, probably.
And
yeah.
if they don't, I avoid them.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because I don't want drama in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And someone who doesn't have boundaries absolutely has drama.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, I reached a point where I realized in my maturity to look for that
mm-hmm.
early on
mm-hmm.
as an indication of how deep to go.
Mm-hmm.
So I look for boundaries right away in people.
Mm-hmm.
And if they don't have boundaries, I give them a wide berth.
Mm-hmm.
I know friends, and believe me, I'm no saint. I didn't have boundaries for a long time,
mm-hmm.
and it ruined my life in a lot of ways because I let people in, and they had influence over me that shouldn't have had influence. They made it easier for me to rationalize bad behavior
mm-hmm.
or, behavior that wasn't healthy for me.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I had to go about reinventing myself, I had to kind of push everybody away for a minute,
mm-hmm.
figure out what it is I believed in,
mm-hmm.
and then let people back in.
Yeah.
And so now I look for it. And if you don't have boundaries, if I meet you and we're taking out and we're talking
mm-hmm.
and you don't have boundaries and how you treat me and how you
mm-hmm.
talk to me,
mm-hmm.
that's a clear indication
mm-hmm.
of whether or not I can be in a relationship
and I think
with
you just mentioned like one of the other hacks is spending some time by yourself, which you hated to do in the beginning when I first met you.
Yeah.
And now like you just spent a weekend by yourself recently where you were like, this is amazing. And that's like when our coach sent me on that weekend retreat by myself with no cell phone, no access to social media. They talk about that with meditation too, that when you get up in the morning, try not to look at your phone and have any input into your brain from other people. Go straight to meditation. Just focus on what your creative brain is telling you, because that's where your ideas actually will flow from the most, is without input from other people, what comes out of you. And I think that's really important too. If you're just beginning, start spending some time by yourself, as scary as it may be for you to do that, to reflect, to get to know yourself. I think that's super critical, and you've done that more and more.
Yeah, if you're listening to this and you want to enact some change in your life, I would recommend you follow our process as far as self-awareness, then authenticity, then boundaries. Mm-hmm. And then in self-awareness, really try to identify what your belief system is.
Yeah.
What is it that you know or you want to be true in your life?
Yeah.
And I mean, we're a herd animal. Like, we are a social animal. Mm-hmm. We like to be around others like us. Mm-hmm. And you don't know, and we're not talking about outward appearance, although that sometimes can be true. Mm-hmm. Right? But we're really talking about who are you going to let into your circle, mm-hmm. and who for the betterment of the circle are you going to keep out? Mm-hmm. And so identifying your belief system, I think, is paramount, mm-hmm. and that comes with self-awareness. And then living that out is authenticity, and then boundaries is just protecting that. Mm-hmm. And protecting the social group that you've put together that matches all of those things. Mm-hmm. So it's not easy. We're not saying
No,
it is.
it's not. It's a constant struggle. And part of the reason why I do throw myself out there, kind of like we talked about with Julie and me, is that I want to increase the circle of people that I want in that tight, authentic circle. And so part of the way I find more people is by putting myself in front of more people, which means a lot of work, right? Because you're constantly, like, you are identifying those people when you first meet them. Where are their boundaries at? Do they have them even? Is this someone I want to put myself around? And you're constantly evaluating, and it's a lot of work, but I want a circle that are a circle of people I want to be with. And so if I want to find new people for my circle, I have to put myself in new situations.
All right, so give it a try.
Yeah.
Coming up soon, Jesse and Margaret find a bottle of whiskey somewhere. They bring it to work where they record their podcast.
Yep. Using our new caboodle.
I know at least 3 things we're going to talk about. And so I want to tell people so that they can start to get up to speed.
That's so
I want to talk about humanism because I had an interesting conversation with somebody about that. The documentary Heal on Netflix, which I'm going to critique harshly with Margaret.
Please do.
Who was a huge advocate for this movie. And maybe a little bit of The Bachelor because he is crazy. He's out of his mind. And this whole show is preposterous.
That's why it's so great.
Oh, it's so preposterous. I can't even.
It's so scripted, too.
And you know what? But hey, you know what? I think we know our demographic. I think all of these things probably will apply. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm looking forward to it myself. It sounds tintillating.
If you are a distiller of fine whiskey and you're looking to support the arts,
yes,
please don't be afraid to reach out to Margaret at picketstreet.com. Mm-hmm. Offer, I don't know. I mean, let's see how it goes.
Yeah, maybe just one bottle to get started
maybe
with.
A case.
Yeah.
And then we'll see how it goes.
I think maybe I'll put an actual ask out there on our Instagram.
I think we should.
Yeah, and see what people say.
You know, if you're someone like Woodinville Whiskey or Pendleton.
There you go.
Hit us up.
Shoot for the stars, man.
You could have.
We will rep you. We will talk about you. We'll mention you every episode if we have to.
You can have these 3 people that reached out to Margaret. Drinking your whiskey.
Oh my gosh.
And if you happen to know anyone buying or selling real estate in Washington State and they need a capable team to represent them, please think of us.
Absolutely.
In the meantime, drive straight. And we'll catch you next week.
Bye, guys.